during a pandemic for 2021. My name is Lauren Spears, and I am PERQ's Marketing Event Manager. Today, we will be talking to Marcella Eppsteiner from Mission Rock Residential. She is their VP of Marketing. Savannah Wheeler, VP of Treasury, IT, and Finance at Mission Rock Residential, and Kim Boland, the Director of Digital Marketing at Morgan Properties. They will be interviewed by Mohammed Yassin. He is PERQ's EVP of Marketing. During our session, you guys will be able to ask questions either in the Q&A function or in the chat feature. They will be chatting for the first 45 minutes, and then you guys will be able to have your questions asked at the end. So please use the chat feature, use the Q&A to get your questions asked. Without further ado, Mohammed, if you want to kick it off.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that. I'm excited about this one. This is kind of a topic that's dear to my heart as well, right? We, as marketers, got 3 of us in the room, and then the finance and apparently all the other titles at Mission Rock person as well. But it'll be a good conversation, I think, from a marketing perspective in particular, just around budgeting with a really nice kind of finance view or lens on that as well. So excited. I appreciate all of you kind of taking the time out on a Thursday to sit down and chit chat with me. So thank you. We are going to do something that's a little bit interactive, right? So not only are we going to be chatting through the course of this, but also I've got a couple of questions for the folks that are following along with this as well. And Lauren, if you can pop that first one up, we are going to start with a poll question around if you have started budgeting for the year. And I'm really curious about this one because normally we should be well underway, but I know there's been a few things happening this year that may have thrown some curveballs towards all of us. And while we're starting that or getting those questions in, first one for the group, I'm curious about, as we look at standards for budgeting, what are like the 2 to 3 things that you make sure you do every time to start your planning process in a normal year? And then we're going to go from there. We're going to talk about the actual planning in the pandemic. And I'd like to, at the back end, maybe like circle back around and chat about a few tips for folks that might be doing budgeting for the first time. Because I know it can be a little bit intimidating, and we all find shortcuts along the way that we wish someone had told us when we first got started. So we're gonna end this whole thing there. But let's start with the top things you look at. And Marcella, let's start with you. Where do you start with planning?
Well, so typically it would be always performance. So we make it a point to look at each asset's property performance in terms of sales volumes, lead volumes, and attribution, and then we compare that year over year. So first is performance that we look at, and then we also look from a marketing standpoint. One of our major focuses for budget season are evaluating the next year's rates for all of our vendor partners and understanding, what that increase looks like. We do a pretty extensive year over year analysis in terms of all of our rate changes and just understanding not only year over year, but also kind of the average. So those are our top 2, is certainly performance evaluation, and then, the dreaded rate conversations. Mm-hmm.
Yes, those. Makes total sense. How about you, Kim?
So during the year, I like, being in the digital world, and I love to look at new products. And during the year, we tend to test out new products, sometimes on 5 to 10, 15 different properties. And we see how that goes. And then as, budget season, sorry, you can hear my dog bark. I apologize.
They're okay.
I should probably go remove them. That during, when budget season comes, we say, okay, is this something we want to roll out across all of our entire portfolio? What's the best rate, along with, if we do this, we need to eliminate something else.
Right. So I hear both of you kind of starting with performance there.
Yeah.
In a way.
I mean, we need to see what's working and then what the cost is. So.
Exactly. So true. So Savannah, when Marcella comes to you, says, this is what I'm thinking going forward. From a finance perspective, what are you looking for? What are you looking at from those starting points to make sure you're kind of aligned going forward?
Well, we have a very collaborative budgeting process. So at the very heart of it, the number one thing is getting feedback from the marketing
Mm-hmm.
department, and we work closely with them to help them with the tools that they need to get all of the data that they could possibly need to
Mm-hmm.
analyze the strategy for next year. And I think we also meet with the accounting department and our operational leaders and everything to develop what the strategy is for the next year, which changes sometimes drastically, like this year, and
Right.
trying to bring everybody together and develop a strategy for our properties is really what it's about. So it's not really about push and pull or kickback or anything. It's just about collaboration and working together.
I think that's a really good point, and one that a lot of folks I think in marketing, especially early on, forget that you're going to get the most one bang for your buck, but also the best ROI out of the cash that you get when you are working across the organization with multiple different departments, right? Because when it comes down to it, it's not just about what did marketing produce. We're not winning unless overall everyone is producing the best. And as marketers, we're just one aspect of that puzzle. So thanks for bringing it up. That's huge. Looks like we got some results in, and we have 53% of the people say that they have actually started budgeting season right now. We've got about 45% that say they have not started. So kind of close to half and half at this point right now, right? Which is, I mean, it's almost the end of July at this point. And we have 3% that say they're not quite sure right now. And where do you all stand on timing right now for starting budget season, considering that, right now it's kind of hard even to see a week ahead, right? Any opinions on that? I'd love to kind of start with you, Kim. I saw you got I actually want to see your puppy, but.
And a big lab. Sorry, I had to get up and get him. He would have continued to bark. Yeah, no, so we've definitely started. I've already spoken to all the vendors. I've already gotten our prices. We do things, I guess, a little differently, where I actually speak to all the vendors and I get all the prices. And then we have regional marketing managers that are in charge of different, about 30 to 40 different properties. And they actually look at the budgets and make sure that, what we want to spend in the packages. So I have already spoken to all of our vendors. I've gotten our prices. We're now, putting everything into spreadsheets and, starting to work with the regional marketing managers to actually decide what spend and what packages they want to do for 2021. So
it feels like you're right on normal schedule right now. Kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, I think this year we're ahead. I feel like last year we went a little late into the year, but I think we spend a lot of time at home. We've gotten ahead of ourselves, so it's good.
That makes sense. I was just about to ask how this year of any years are you ahead of the schedule on budgeting, but it does make a lot of sense that being at home we actually have a little bit more control of our time, a little bit more actually I think mental space and energy to work through some of these challenges as well. So that's really interesting. All right, we're going to move into the pandemic portion because I know that's what everyone is here for. All right, so differences between what you normally do. So we talked about how you normally go into the process, right? And you probably have you guys have been doing this for a while, right? So I know you've got your system set up. What's different about how you're approaching the planning process for the budget right now, given the pandemic and all the changes that are around that? And kind of as a follow-up, if you want to add in, just like what kind of permanent changes do you kind of see coming into multifamily as well? A lot of these conversations we've been having these are things that are the same now. They're never going to go away. We're just maybe doing them slightly differently. But there's always these little tweaks that we know are changes now that probably are never going to stop. So things like, if we went back to virtual tours, for example, we're going to have in-person tours again, but we're never going to come back to a point where virtual tours go back to the low level that they were at before. They will always be in the mix, right? So what about budgeting? Let's start with Marcella here. What's different this year and going forward?
Yeah. So I mentioned that we do an extensive performance evaluations for each of our communities and the attribution. And this year is no different. It's just that the tweak here is we're not only comparing just the straight data year over year, we're actually
Mm-hmm.
looking at more year over year variances, and we've even branched out further. So instead of just comparing 2020 to 2019, we're also overlaying 2018, 2017
Oh,
in an attempt to actually find how far off are we from the norm in terms of our property's performance. And I think that is pretty significant in terms of just a shift in the way that we are evaluating performance for budget season. I would say also rate conversations are just a little bit more spirited this year, in the sense that, you know, we're just being much more conservative because we don't know how long this is going to endure. And you know, we're also collaborating. You know, Savannah mentioned Mission Rock. The way that we budget is definitely interdepartmental collaboration is hands down at the foundation. But this year, more than ever, like our revenue management team is actually sharing insights in terms of lease expiration strategies and renewal strategy. And the ops team is sharing payment plan expirations and payment plan kind of percentages at each community, and projected eviction moratorium lifts and how that may impact. So there's just a lot more.
Yes.
I think that our process is just much more thorough, and we're really sharing our data points across our departments. Traditionally, we would share our feedback and we would share kind of input for the strategy. And this year, the real difference is we're seeing specific, like the granular data points that are strategy determining factors for each department.
I'd like to dig into that data. I'm definitely a data marketer, right? So
I know, it's why we get along so well.
Right. Okay, so the idea of going back and usually doing like year over year, right? I'm assuming that part of the reason you're going back another year is the fact that I know my data for 2020 is garbage. Right? It is completely different than anything that has ever been there before, and it skews everything. Why 1 year versus 2 years? Or when did you realize, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to do this the same way?
Well, pretty much in March. There was a particular week in March where everything just stopped. Yep. And we very quickly realized, oh yeah, 2020's data is going to be an incredible outlier. And so I remember attending a webinar many years ago, and actually David Davidoff was speaking, and he says, you know, year over year is great, but it really doesn't share anything. You should always try to go back 3 to 5 years. And he's absolutely right. But this pandemic, in terms of understanding and accepting 2020's numbers, are an anomaly. They are going to be an outlier. Yeah. We don't know how long that's going to last, but at least by zooming out and looking at several years, again, we can just better understand how much of an outlier is 2020.
Right.
And like we are experiencing record level lead volume, lower tour volume, but similar lease volume as last year.
Interesting.
But how is that going to compare to, you know, the prior 3 years, especially understanding seasonality?
Yeah, that's interesting. What about Kim? What are you seeing? Because you're well into the spreadsheets at this point, is what I'm hearing. What's looking different for you this year versus before? What's changed? We got you on mute.
I think the way that people are, we're just helping to promote the properties, with leasing offices closed and people not wanting to come in. So, a big focus of ours is self-guided tours. And, we've done a mass amount of Matterports. I think most of our summer, we did about 500 Matterports for our properties. We've started to implement, we started to implement a lot of new things on site that first of all, were not budgeted last year, and costing money, but we have no choice because people aren't coming in. So, we're trying to figure out a way to get people in the door, but in a safe way, either them walking in the door or doing everything from home. So that's a huge thing that we're working on and working into the budgets of how we're promoting our properties, but to keep everybody safe into the future.
That makes sense. Do you think that's a plan just for 2021 thing, or what do you think about the kind of the rental behavior? Is this something you're going to have to continue to shift that budget mix towards some of those virtual things long term?
Yeah, I think this will definitely change renter behavior in the long run. I mean, we're training people in all types of ways to do things different in their life, including keeping their hands clean all the time. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff was a talk before COVID hit. Self-guided tours was definitely a big topic prior to this, and I think that it's going to become even bigger now going forward because it's just something that people need in order to keep their staff safe, as well as before we were trying to make it easy for the renter to have an experience, but now it's to keep everybody safe and healthy. So I think that this stuff is just going to continue to go forward, and there's definitely going to be new products along the way. I think COVID's going to bring out a whole slew of new products that have just popped up that no one's thought about and nobody needed, and now we're going to need. So
and we're going to jump into that a little bit too, like later on. I do want to talk about like just technology solutions. You're right. There are a lot of tools that have been a lot of smaller tools that I've been keeping an eye on that suddenly have blown up over the course of this because they were much more needed. It's kind of like us being on Zoom right now. If we want to talk a big company, right? They have definitely made quite a jump through all of this, right? Good product to begin with. Good positioning, right? But they were here for us. Now all of a sudden I'm meeting friends for drinks on a Wednesday night on the internet, which would have been very creepy 4 months ago. Savannah, so I'm kind of curious, as you are reviewing budget, if the budgets are coming to you or collaborating with people to build on these budgets, what are some things that you're looking at this year that are different from the past?
Well, I think that for one, usually budgeting is very much a push and pull, wish list, cutting expenses. This is what we want. This is, and this year is definitely more about what do we need. It's a lot more purposeful, purposefully investing in the technology that we need. And it's not, the discussion isn't 100%. I mean, obviously with our owners, it's much about cutting expenses, but internally at Mission Rock, it's not a wish list discussion of this is the cool shiny toy, this is what we want, we want to try it out. It's very much a different conversation about what do we need to get through this time and for the longevity of, we don't know what's going to happen, but if this is a semi-permanent situation, how do we invest in the technology or tools that we need to get through it and have that edge, that we need above everything.
It's funny how stuff like this just strips away all the extra and makes you really focus on what do you need, because there's a lot of shiny toys out there. Right?
Yeah,
I think it's part because we love them.
All sorts of conferences to show off all of these shiny toys, and right now there's no conferences either, so we're very purposefully seeking out the tools that we need to make that happen as well. So it's
what
a
does
lot
that
more
look like? What does that look like? I'm kind of curious from all of you. Like, I know that conferences, there are several of them, right? And they are a place, I think, not only for suppliers, but also for folks that are shopping. That's the main place that you go to see what's available, what's new, et cetera, right? Big one kind of coincides right with budget season would be Apartmentalize, right? It didn't happen this year, right? And generally that's where most of those conversations for discovery in particular are happening. How are you going out to find new things? I know we've kind of chatted about existing vendors that you may have, kind of getting new rate cards from them, making decisions. I love the spreadsheet idea, kind of like really like in detail looking at all of them. So you kind of have that relationship already. But to your point, Marcella, there is also lots of new tools potentially out there that are going to be valuable in this type of buying like behavior. How are you guys finding them? I'll let whoever wants to take that one first.
I would say that I think that you know, while from an operator standpoint and manager standpoint, we have shifted the way that we operate, right? We've shifted from in-person to virtual. I would also say that our vendor partners have shifted their strategies and have done a great job at pivoting and remaining agile and reaching out with purposeful messaging to where it's not spam, it's not necessarily cold call, it's really leading with intention and leading with value that I personally think, so right now, vendor partners or potential vendor partners are reaching out. I think also word of mouth is incredibly powerful in our industry, and specifically LinkedIn. There's actually been two new technologies that I just became aware of because someone I'm connected with on LinkedIn posted about it. And so I think just for vendor partners, just you know, shifting and I think that they've done a better job at, you know, leading with, like I said, you know, value statements and their intention head on. And also understanding, to Savannah's point, and Kim mentioned this, you know, we are having to reevaluate what is necessary versus what's shiny. And I think that like Smart Rent is a great example in the sense of their messaging really shifted from pre-COVID to you know, COVID, in the sense of it's no longer just, oh, self-guided tours are new and you know, exciting, and here's how you can cut your sales team. It's really actually, here's how we can provide an alternative leasing option that's safe for everyone, for both your leasing team and your customer, that enhances your sales team, not necessarily.
Right.
I think that's kind of a shift. And this isn't your direct question, but Savannah, when you mentioned, you know, what do we need? Something else that's changed during this budget season is the need for PPE, the need for just the logistics of sanitizing things and, you know, fogging apartments. And I think all of that is going to be critical during this budget season, to just be mindful of where are you going to find that that budget, and where, you know, where are you gonna have to pull from and reallocate. So I know that wasn't exactly
that's not an insignificant amount of budget though, right? Like
no,
that could be
yeah, but it's certainly, I mean, that's a change in this budget season, is actually forecasting how much PPE you'll need and forecasting, you know, how many turns you'll have and what that process looks like now.
Wow. How about you, Kim?
So I was going to say that, you know, I guess we got lucky not having too much snow, at least in Pennsylvania this winter. So all that money that went to snow removal actually got repurposed, you know, sanitizing. So that money didn't go to waste. So, you know, I don't think anybody has stopped contacting me. I can say that my inbox is probably a lot fuller. My phone has ring a lot more. So I don't think that these vendors have, I mean, like Marcella said, they've definitely found other ways to get a hold of us, and they have. So I've definitely had a lot of meetings over the past few months. So they're just shiny and new, but through an email instead of sitting in you know, a big conference room. So
sure. And this is kind of also a slight divergence. What's the usual kind of like chat process usually is kind of a face-to-face sit down, meet people, talk through the product thing, and now all of us are basically, you know, on Zoom calls all day long instead. How has that been for you from a like understanding the product perspective when you're doing it at home, or some of us actually have been in the office for small bits of time here and there, versus having that actual like interaction? Do you feel like you're still getting the value you need? Is it better? Is it worse?
I mean, I think that, you know, vendors have definitely increased their, you know, production of, you know, their PowerPoints and, you know, how they're displaying things towards us. So they're just utilizing more tools on their end to make their product, you know, appealing to us just through like showing on the computer. I mean, a lot of the products that we do like talk to at conferences, I mean, nothing is really touching. I mean, you don't really feel how soft and, you know, how versatile it is. I mean, a lot of stuff is, how is it being used? So I guess in this, they were able to actually, you know, go out and shoot things and show us how it's been used. So I think they've actually been able to explain the product a lot better because it is, you know, virtual. They're showing us how it's used instead of just standing behind the booth. So I think that's actually helped them a lot, you know, in selling their product.
That's interesting. There's so many like just little things that have changed, I think, through all of this that have come out better for all of us, honestly, right? Socially or from a business perspective. So it's nice to hear some of those things.
I would say that for the for our vendor partners, another thing that's helped our awareness of what's out there is our vendor partners are reaching out to all levels in our organization, on-site teams, corporate teams. And Savannah actually spearheads a group that we have internally that essentially anytime, let's say a vendor partner goes to property A and talks to a property manager and that property manager loves that idea, we actually have an internal process where they would shoot that idea over to Savannah's group and they evaluate it from a holistic standpoint and really evaluate whether or not it's necessary versus a wish item. And Savannah, you can speak to that process, but I think that's another way that we're able to stay ahead of the curve and see what's out there in terms of the new and shiny.
I love it. I love it. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, Savannah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's kind of more on my IT hat. I'll switch my hat. But we did suffer for quite a long time of chasing the shiny toy and implementing and re-implementing or changing systems, and we were experiencing too much change with our teams, and it was overwhelming for our teams. It was overwhelming for the IT team to keep switching with all of these interfaces and such. And so we developed a committee that we call our advisory team, and it's kind of a steering committee where we do accept all ideas from everyone into a central email box, and anyone can email any idea, whether it's system related or not. Sometimes they're just process ideas that we can put in the right hands to make change, positive change in our company. But we meet and we go through our pipeline of requests, and we also survey our teams to get feedback on the systems that we have in place, what's working, what's not, and we evaluate what positive change we can make for our team members so that we can make their job easier and also help with the performance of our properties, which is our ultimate goal. So we have representation. Marcella's on the team, I'm on the team. We have representation from accounting and operations and everyone so that we can steer our company and our strategy and our decisions in the best direction we think possible.
You're pushing the idea of really kind of like socializing that finance or like budgeting process to a higher level. I love that. A lot of times it's the folks that are right up front that may know things that we're missing. So I love that. I have another question I want to ask before I get to the big one that I really want to talk about, which is rent collection and eviction moratoriums. Okay, we're going to spend a little bit of time there. But before that, I'm kind of curious about balancing of planning, right? All of you clearly have very detailed processes that you go through, you've been going through. You know how to set yourself up for next year. But at the same time, things are shifting so fast right now on a day-to-day, week to week, month to month basis on what's allowed. And we're going forward, then we're going backwards, then we're going forward, then we're just stopping altogether. Then and we don't really know how long this is going to happen. And it's forced, I think, all of us to be a little bit more nimble in it. And you used the word earlier, Marcella, agile. Force us to be more agile in how we do our planning. How are you balancing for right now what you need versus setting yourself up for, a future January that could be completely different than what we're seeing right now in July of 2020? How are you leaving yourself room to still win? You're doing a lot of nodding, Marcella, so we're going to start with you.
That is not an easy question. I mean, it's not a simple question, obviously. I would say from our end, how are we striking that balance, or at least attempting to balance, as we really are leaning into the data even more than we already did. as digital marketers, we've always, you know, we really have, we've been leaning into data, but now it's truly a holistic approach. All departments are leaning into their respective data resources. I think also the priorities, being much more selective about what we end up choosing to invest in, and ongoing performance evaluations. We always evaluated our community performance on a quarterly basis. And I would say that's actually moved even to a monthly basis, and not necessarily make strategy changes, but more monthly to just observe shifts and trends, and just understand, is this a blip, or is this actually, you know, a seasonal role, which we, as a result, we've actually found monthly trends within traffic volumes, even renewal volumes, move in, move out, net move-ins, where we've seen, we can actually identify there is a week over week trend within each month. So I just think for us, finding that balance from especially from the marketing end has been just more performance evaluation, just more eyes on it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Kim, let's go to you here. You're so far ahead of all of us. How are you succeeding at doing that while still thinking about what could happen and leaving yourself some wiggle room? What's that look like for you?
I don't know.
I'm super jealous about
ahead,
where you are actually, because I'm not there and I really want to be.
Well, I think we just learned a lot from last year that, you know, there's so many changes, and over the past year, my company has grown significantly. And, you know, we took over 100 properties, you know, from June to December, and that makes a massive change in the way, you know, we pretty much doubled our size. So looking at that and discussing what we're going to do, because some products that we've been using for, you know, mortgage properties for so long might not work for these properties. And, you know, we learned from them, you know, what worked for, you know, maybe something they were doing is working better than what we have. So we've spent a lot of time, you know, over the past year looking at different products and saying this worked for them and it didn't work for us, and vice versa. So it's been a lot of rolling out through the year, I should say. But yeah, I think that sort of pushed me to start budgeting earlier and talking to my vendor partners and, you know, getting my prices, so that way we could say, okay, we're going to go move forward with this, and, you know, or we're going to move forward with this and put our dollars someplace else. So far they have not cut our budget. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed on that we still have a little bit of money to spend.
I'll cross mine for you.
So yeah, I mean, we're still looking for new products to the future. We've definitely implemented a lot of stuff this year. And we've made the decision to keep that stuff for next year that we implemented during COVID. Different AI tools and bots and different products on our websites. We've changed the look on our website. You know, I think we were able to do a lot of smaller things, which haven't cost as much money, so we don't need to budget as large. We've become very creative over this time to help what we're using increase you know, leads and occupancy. So,
a lot of those.
I mean, we're still looking to the future, but yeah. I mean, just changing a picture can change so much on your website. So
it really can, and I think that, you know, as marketers, a lot of times there's so many of those like little optimization things we can do, but when we are spending so much time trying to chase big things, sometimes we forget to focus on getting, you know, 2 to 3 great tools that are on our website, and then just spending the rest of our energy optimizing, whether that's with that vendor partner or whether that's internally, just finding those little tweaks, right? The button need to be a different color? Do I need a different picture? Do I need line art versus a picture? Do I need just go until you get everything you can out of it, right?
Yeah.
And then you go from there. I'm totally with you on that. I'm going to start this next one with Savannah because I'm curious about starting it from a finance perspective. And this is the idea of kind of the impact, right? So we've got rent collection that I think we've all been thinking about. Every end of every month since March, right? What's going to happen next month, right? We've got unemployment rates kind of bouncing all over the place, right? And we've got eviction moratoriums everywhere at this point, pretty much, right? I know here in Indy, we've kind of had them, pulled them down, had them. Like, it's just a lot of things that are potentially impacting cash flow in general. What are your thoughts on the situation as a whole, impact on the multifamily space, and where you think this is going?
Well, I think that, to your point, external data is more important than it's ever been. I know that from our perspective, usually we have a lot of external data when we're taking on a property, and our ownerships use it to see whether it's a good investment or not. And we're always touching base with it, but I think we're relying on it a lot more to try and predict the future that we don't know. And I think that it's absolutely essential to have accessibility to that data and to group it all together. So my team has spent a lot of time over the last couple of months trying to get as much data as we can and make the connections between them to try and find any and all correlations to the data that will help us predict an uncertain future, which is impossible in this environment. But I think the best thing we can do is rely on that data. As far as where it's going, I think for us personally, we have the benefit of having a really strong operational leadership in our company, and we're run by our operational leadership. And all last year trying to cut expenses, and our last budgeting cycle was very much focused on that we've been on the high too long. There's going to be a drop. There's going to be an economic drop, and we need to be prepared for it. We need to tighten things up. We need to have more purposeful spending. We need to figure out what will happen if we can't continue to raise rents. What will happen if we can't continue to keep occupancy where it's at? And it was really big discussion last year when we were budgeting. So I feel like we were a little bit ahead of the curve because we were kind of anticipating something, not this big, obviously, not this sudden.
No, none of us were, right?
But we knew something was coming. And so I think that's one of the things that really helps us. And I think that mainly the evictions is our biggest risk, because the rental industry sees ups and downs all of the time. This isn't the first drop in the economy, but people need homes and people need to rent, and that's what we provide. And it's about having the right demographic that can pay for the homes that we provide. And if we can't change our demographics over, then that's the biggest risk we have. So I think that it's about time and longevity and trying to figure out how do we make it to the point where our demographics will organically change to have people who can rent our apartments.
Wow, that is heavy and so true. How are you taking this into consideration, Kim, from a planning perspective, as you're going forward and you're thinking about things? How is this impacting your planning, not only from a budgeting perspective, but just from a marketing perspective in general? Getting the right people in there, getting around some of this bumpiness out there, right? We all know that, like, when things like this happen, it's going to impact marketing budgets, right? It has to. Like, we have to walk that line of maintaining them so we can continue to get more people in the door, but still being more conservative at the same time. What are your thoughts in general of the situation, I guess, overall? And then how are you reacting to it from a marketing perspective?
I mean, the situation is hard because we have a lot of residents who can't pay their rent or haven't been able to pay their rent. And, that's, heartbreaking for us because we don't ever want to see somebody not have a place to live. I mean, I think, right now evictions have not taken place yet. We can definitely see, on our spreadsheet how many people will be moving out in the next few months. But, it's hard because you can't it's hard to react on that now because it hasn't happened
Yes.
yet. But, you know, in some of the properties where we know there will be a large amount of evictions, we've definitely started to, you know, increase advertising, you know, push a little bit of Google PPC just to get our name more out there in order to get more leads in the door. So we are ready. You know, no matter what this happens, people still need a place to live, and people's leases are still up, and people are getting ready to move out of their parents' house if they can, because they've had enough.
Lots of grants,
so,
right?
you know, there's, I mean, this industry is very lucky because it is going to be a constant flow of people, and it really won't end because people are constantly moving. So, you know, we've just continued to look at it like, if this was the occupancy, although they are here now, but if this is the occupancy, what would we do to get more people in the door? And that's sort of what we're focusing on. You know, lucky for me, I've gotten more people on my team, which is awesome, which definitely helps us. Yeah, so it really helps us online, you know, really promote and, you know, to clean things up and, you know, make things, you know, appealing so people do choose our community to move into. So, you know, we're just sort of looking at it like the occupancy is down and what would we normally do to increase it.
Kind of taking that potential negative, really looking at the opportunity, and I love that, right? And saying, all right, well, I've got more units I can sell now, right? And go out there and get the job done. I love that. How about you, Marcella? I know you had some opinions very strong around the moratoriums in general. Let's jump on it.
Yeah. And opinions are strong, but just not necessarily. I mean, it's really just about the transparency. So as Kim mentioned, you know, within her organization, they're transparently sharing at each asset, you know, what, how many move outs they're anticipating, right? And I think understanding not only the volume of anticipated move outs, but also the timing of that is going to be crucial, especially as we're heading into fall and winter season, which are traditionally, you know, on the lower end in terms of lead volumes in most parts of the country. So I think under that timing, and you really only can understand that timing and those projected forecasts just through transparent communication with across your organization. And also in leveraging your revenue management team, you know, you need to, for any operators on this call, especially on-site teams, sharing your projected move outs with your revenue management team or with the senior operational management team. So that way you can effectively manage renewal lease expirations and new lease expirations and reduce month-to-month exposure, and then sharing that information, to Kim's point, with the marketing team so that way we can actually proactively anticipate adding more dollars to those specific assets. I just think the transparency between the departments is critical this year more than ever. But not only just during budget season, but also just even moving past that. Some of the eviction moratoriums in our footprint, you know, they're not going to expire until October, November. And so imagine if you're anticipating, you know, I don't know, 5%, you know, of evictions at a particular community at that time of year. I mean, that will significantly impact your performance and your spend. And so just being ahead of the game and looking at that information now and sharing that information.
Right. Build the pipeline up front. I love how kind of Kim's approaching that. Get the folks ready. If and when the units are available, get them in there, right?
Yeah,
I love it.
And you know, it is very personal. I mean, we are in the industry of providing homes for people. There's, other than healthcare, there's nothing more personal than that. And so this is the time where we have to respond with compassion. And as much as we would love for our residents to stay or love for potential renters to rent here, at the end of the day, you know, we are in the business of providing homes. And so helping our customers find the right home. And if just because they're going through the eviction process does not mean that has to be a heartless experience. You know, we can connect them with better community options or with the right resources in their local community.
Thank you for saying that. Really appreciate that. All right, we've got a couple of minutes here, so we're gonna flip over. We're probably gonna do maybe 2 questions in the new folks area. And for all those folks that are watching along, if you got any questions or Q&As, go ahead and pop those over now. We'll start keeping an eye out for that. quick poll. How long have you been doing budgeting for property, Savannah?
Oh,
The eyes said it all. I saw that was like the flashback eyes.
a while. I think I've been at Mission Rock for 12 years, since 2012, so 8 years of
That's
Mission
awesome.
Rock budgeting.
So we got 8 years of finance. Marcella?
I've been in the industry for 16 years. I started
Okay.
on site, so I did on-site budgeting. So it's 16 years.
16, so we got 8, 16, and how about you, Kim? From a
So I've
budgeting
been with
perspective.
Morgan 11. I've been with Morgan 11 years, but about 6 years I've been sort of involved with,
Okay.
you know, getting
So
everything.
all of you have been in there enough to, like, you know what's up, and probably just like myself, you made some mistakes in the earlier, or you just spent some wasted time that you wish you wouldn't have before. If you were talking to someone who's starting brand spanking, actually was talking via email with someone I was looking at the event yesterday, and they were literally in training yesterday because they just took the job over, right? If you were talking to your past self doing your first budget, what is some advice you would give to yourself starting that budget journey? And we'll start
for
with
help.
Kim. Ooh,
I would definitely ask for help, right? I mean, it's not, no one's reinventing the wheel. Like everybody's been doing this for so long and people have tweaked it along the way. I mean, there's people in your company who have definitely great knowledge of how this works. And I think the best thing to do instead of struggling on your own is just to go out and ask for help. And, you know, people are willing to help you do this because they want to make sure that, you know, everything is best for you and your property, you know, because in the long run that, you know, helps you out. So I would definitely just ask for help.
I love that. I love that transparency, like really kind of opening up. It is definitely a huge thing that I think not just marketers, but just people new in their career in generally may hesitate to ask for that help because it may be viewed as a sign of weakness, and it really isn't. It's a sign of using all your resources to the best of your ability and getting the job done. That's awesome. How about you, Marcella?
I would say preparation. If you are new to this is your first budget season, take the time to review what did last year's budget look like. What were all the considerations? And if you're using a budget software, that will make your life even easier. But your PMS is a great start. And then certainly, you know, leveraging your internal resources, asking for help, and honestly asking your peers. Do not underestimate the power of your peers. That should be a bumper sticker. But really, you know, just asking, you know, your fellow property manager or your fellow regional managers, and really leveraging, you know, your supervisor. And you're right, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is truly just a smarter approach to completing the task at hand.
I'm going to ask it a little bit differently for you, Savannah, for not just marketers, but you have everyone coming to you to some extent, working with you on budget. And it can be different to, I think, learn to talk to someone on the finance side of the business when you first got started. Maybe you were doing more operation or execution-based types of things versus the strategy items. And you're kind of shifting into that role. Advice for someone coming first time to kind of start working with finance and have a good relationship and a good rapport with them. What does that look like?
Well, I think it's really about knowing the superpowers of the different departments and the different people involved in budgeting, and understanding what they're bringing to the table, and getting rid of an ego. You know, like we're in the business of predicting the future, and that's not something you can do by yourself, you know, and right. It involves so many different pieces that you really, you know, I like what Kim said, is it's about understanding that you can't do it on your own. Don't be a hero, and don't try to assume that, you know, if you're in marketing that you know the most, or if you're in operations, you know the most, or you're in finance, you know the most. it's not about that. It's not about accounting knowing the most. It's about what do each department or each person coming to the table, what is their expertise, and how can we leverage that to have a cohesive process. It's, we're trying to predict the future. Is an impossible feat normally, and especially this year. If you're new to the game, particularly this year, don't try to be a hero. Don't try to solve the world's problem. Don't try to predict the future by yourself. Know where your strengths are and know where to go to find the strengths of others to support you. So
it's awesome. Teamwork. We're all in this together, right? All right, we're gonna do a lightning round question, and then we'll have Lauren come back to wrap us all up. We're close on time, and I want to make sure that we're being respectful of that. So we've talked just a second ago about some pitfalls to avoid, right? I think all three of you kind of looked at it like, don't avoid this, because when you do that, you're really going to succeed. Let's talk about efficiency hacks, right? Budget process is long, right? There's a lot of pieces, a lot of spreadsheets, there's a lot of data to collect, there's a lot of systems and people to talk to. Shortcuts. One shortcut, personal efficiency hack that has helped your budgeting process, and you wish someone had told you that when you got started. We'll start this time with Marcella. Lightning round, go. Last words, basically.
Spreadsheets are great. They're so wonderful, but a budget software is a game changer. That is, honestly, I wish I had that when I was back on stage.
Awesome. That's perfect. Perfect. Kim.
I think, we have about 8 or 9 different people in the marketing budget, working off the marketing budget, and then all that gets wrapped up and then gets sent back to me. And I found that for last year, people were naming things their own names, but so I had like 6 different spreadsheets with different names of, one product. Right. So this year we were actually smartened up and already set the spreadsheet to have one specific name, and then people could just drop it down in the box. Gotcha. So people can just go down, drop, whatever package automatically fills in. So we've definitely smartened up on that. It makes sending everything to vendors a lot easier. And when you're sorting things, it makes that a lot easier. So
easier to sort, easier to pivot table, easier to everything, right?
Simple, but yeah.
No, that's a really good one. I love those data specific ones for sure. What about you, Savannah? Efficiency hack.
Well, the budget software definitely is a huge one, but I would also be
on the same page there.
Yeah. But I would say that the biggest efficiency hack is to every year reflect on how the budget went, what areas could we improve, and what logic we can build in. We've been using our budgeting software this will be our third or fourth budgeting cycle with it. And every year we sit down with everyone and say, so what was painful? What was painful in this process? Wow. And how can we improve it? How can we make it faster? How can we make it more intuitive? And what logic? Every year we're trying to build more logic in so that the pieces that we can automate, and then we can spend more time focusing on the areas that we need to really focus on.
Awesome, appreciate that. We got one question from the audience from Lauren. She would like to know, do you mind sharing which budgeting software you use?
We use Anaplan, which is a budgeting and forecasting software. It's not industry specific, but it is very flexible and customizable, and it's been a huge game changer for us.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. All right. So a couple of things basically to kind of summarize it up. I heard from all of you basically prioritize, right? Focus on what you need versus what you want. Lots of discussion from all of you around really talking across the organization and getting lots of information and discussing where to go on things. I love that type of thing. And that's kind of summarized in the one statement. I forgot who said it. It was like, do not underestimate the power of your peers, right? And I think that goes whether or not you are brand spanking new to budgeting or whether you've been doing it for 16 years. Get around the organization, talk to as many people as you possibly can, collect as much information as you can, especially in a time like now that's crazy. And then make sure you're hand in hand with your finance person as you kind of get this job done and be nimble down the road. Thanks all of you for chatting with me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella, Kim, and Savannah. I think coming into this, we knew budget was just numbers, but maybe some of us didn't know that there is a real human aspect that you have to take when budgeting and keeping your renters and your team in mind. So thank you all so much for sharing your insight on today's chat. For everyone who attended, you guys will be receiving a follow-up email and blog post from us. Please expect that on Monday. And it will contain the full session recap video as long with any tools or materials we talked about during this session. So please be on the lookout for that. And as always, we are always hosting webinars or social events. So please be on the lookout from emails from either Mohammed or myself for those. But thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you guys learned a little bit. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.